All right. Welcome to the Dashboard Dojo. So glad that you could join us again. Today, we're going to talk about standard report types in Salesforce. So when you buy Salesforce, you first fire up your system, there are about 75 or so standard report types. We can't delete the standard report types. We can't change the standard report types. We can now in Lightning hide the standard report types if you wish. We could do that for years in Classic. They've given us the functionality in the last year to hide standard report types in Lightning, but otherwise we really can't change them. There are some really interesting things that I learned rummaging around to prep for today's dojo. So I'm excited to talk through those with you. So again, welcome to the Dashboard Dojo. My name is David Carnes. We have been we're about two and a half years into working on the dojo. So Kyle Shagnon, who's the events manager at OpFocus. Thank you again for joining us, Kyle.
Always a pleasure.
So we have lots and lots of recordings. The most recent session that we did was on Spring 23 report and dashboard features. We try to do for each of the releases a release specific dojo session to go through all the good stuff. And there's a lot in that release. So if you missed that, you can see the QR code there. So on the Dashboard Dojo site, there's a link to recordings and you can see all of them. There's a cloud tag that you can find specific topics that you might be interested in. So we have lots and lots of recordings on all different report and dashboard topics. So we'll do a quick introduction. I'll talk about our sponsor, OpFocus. We'll go through a list of Waza techniques and Shiai will dig into the system a little bit. Talk about a reporting class that I'm teaching next week. We'll talk about the upcoming dojo topics. We have the chat open, and if you'd like to pop a question into the chat, Kyle will keep me honest and just try to keep up on questions that you might ask during the session. So don't hold back. Really glad that you joined us today. Again, my name is David Carnes. I'm the chairman of OpFocus. Really honored to be part of the Salesforce MVP program. And I thought to share, if I didn't share already, that I'm a Boston admin group leader. I'm a new group leader, though it's taken me 17 years of going to user group meetings to actually raise my hand and say, yeah, I'll help drive the group. So in November, we had our first in-person meeting in 2.5 years. And what was so cool is that Vala Afshar, who's Salesforce's chief digital evangelist, he agreed very graciously to be interviewed at our user group meeting. So there are over 1,000 user groups around the world in the Salesforce community. If you're not part of one, if I'd encourage you to look. I mean, there's so many of them for such specific topics like women in tech, developers, nonprofits. We have at least 20 in New England. So anyway, so our sponsor for the Dashboard Dojo is OpFocus. OpFocus helps SaaS companies scale their go-to-market operations. OpFocus is a consulting shop. It's been working with Salesforce since 2006. All right, so let's get to the heart of this. What we're going to talk about today. There's the report type selection screen. We're going to go through that. You can see the screenshot over on the right here. I want to talk about the word with. The word with is loaded in standard report types. And I want you to be very wary of the word with. It's not used consistently. There's also some interesting stuff in the documentation that might be valuable to you. So there's something called the standard report type documentation, and it has some stuff that's actually pretty useful. So we'll just look at a few examples of that. While prepping for today, I learned something that I had never heard of before, which is called a pre-designed custom report type. There's sort of this weird gray area of there's standard report types and there are custom report types. And we've done dojo sessions on custom report types and how to use them, how to set them up. And then there's this weird category in the middle of sometimes when you enable a feature or a sysadmin enables a feature in setup, report types are created. And those are called pre-designed custom report types. Some of those appear in the list of custom report types, others don't. And I can't find any consistency to it, but I was interested to find that topic, and we'll talk about that today. We'll talk about hidden report types for a moment, since Salesforce gave us the functionality last year in Lightning. And then I want to talk about finding gold. So there are too many standard report types to talk about in this session today. So what I thought to do is talk to you about how to find the good stuff rummaging around within the standard report types. I also want to talk about some of the differences between a standard report type, let's say on cases, and a custom report type, let's say on the case object, and what you get with both of those. I'll share a list of standard report types that I find particularly useful. Some of them have very special fields available. I also thought to share a little bit of obscure stuff, and this may only interest me. Some of these features are ancient, but we'll talk about some obscure stuff with report types. And then I do want to circle back to something that didn't get brought over. It wasn't brought over to Lightning. So back in Classic, there were a big pile of sample reports. Now, some of those sample reports have unique report types underneath the hood. When Salesforce introduced Lightning, they didn't bring over the sample reports from Classic. But interestingly, you can switch back to Classic, run one of those reports, save it, and then you can use it in Lightning. And again, some of those have unique report types that don't exist anywhere else. And I didn't look very far, and I found a few. I was like, I know this doesn't exist. It's not a standard report type, but it's also not a custom report type. So some interesting things to talk about today. Thank you for joining us. Before we get started, we have a quick poll. I'm just curious for this topic, standard report types. So the question is, what is your typical usage of standard report types? It looks like the word types got truncated. No worries there, but what's your typical usage of standard report types? If you just share. So do you generally stick to the simple object types? That's me. Do you venture further into standard report types? Have you tried them all? We had Evan Ponter as a guest a few weeks ago, and he talked about his research and work in the area of deluxe report types. Also wanted to leave room in case somebody has no idea what we're talking about, and that's okay too. All right, so it looks like we've got a good chunk of people responding already. So why don't we show the results on that? Very cool. All right, so 27% stick to the simple object types. So you're in the right place. Let's talk about why some of these other ones might be available. So about half of you venture further into the standard report types, A+ for you, and maybe there's some more digging you can do and find some good stuff. And if you've tried them all, that's about a quarter of you. So that's kind of cool. I don't even think I go into that category. And I'll explain one reason why I shy away from a whole bunch of them, and it has to do with the word with. Great. So those are our results. And let's keep going. All right, so the first place where you see these standard report types is on the report type selection screen. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you see the categories. When Salesforce made the changes to the screen last year, they introduced the recently used, which is good, except for the first time you ever create a report in a system, you have no recently used ones. And the search yields nothing because it's specific to the category. What you might do in your system is either dig into these specific categories down below. The categories are not changeable, but you could dig into the specific categories, or you could just use all. And if you select the all category, then the search changes to be search all report types instead of recent report types. And you can look for keywords in your in the report type names. So it's definitely worth digging into these. If you don't use contracts or orders, you might decide to hide those report types and the category goes away. We'll talk about how to do that in a moment. With the change that they made last year to this screen, they started to display the word category. Unfortunately, they used the word category twice in two different ways on the same screen. This stuff drives me crazy. So they have the word category over here for which essentially like this is like a folder, and this is whether it's standard or custom. And there's another word they use in setup for standard or custom. Why didn't they just use that word? I don't know. But so we can see here, I've got a list of reports, and then I have, and these are all standard, and then I have one called opportunities with historical trending. This one is sort of in that middle area where it's really not a custom report type. It's a it's a feature. Once you enable the feature historical trending on the opportunity object, it creates that special report type for you. So it's sort of in between. But I find this really helpful to see, is it standard or custom? So let's keep going. So kind of as a fairly significant aside here, when I ask the question, how many of you just stick to the main object name report types? I mean, I mostly report when I report on opportunities. I'd say over 90% of the time, I'm just reporting on this one with the object name opportunities. And the reason is that a lot of these other ones with the word with, so opportunities with contact roles, opportunities with partners, opportunities with competitors. So basically these ones in yellow here, they have an equijoin in between those two things. So opportunities with contact roles, you literally won't see any opportunities that have no contacts associated with them. So those will just be left off the pile. If you might have heard me say in the dojo before, opportunities with products used to be that way more than a decade ago, and Salesforce quietly changed it, and it's a left outer join now. So that means you would get all opportunities, and if they have products, you get those too. But if they don't have products, you still get the opportunities. So a left outer join, you can see the diagram over here on the right. This would give us all opportunities, and if they have products, great, show me them too. These other examples with the word with are inner joins where you'd only see opportunities if they have partners, or you'd only see opportunities if they have competitors. So this makes these ones in yellow here worth so much less because you could go create a custom report type, opportunities with or without contact roles. And to me, that would be more useful than what these are. So sort of a long-winded thing. But when you're looking at the list of report types, there will be some that don't comply with what I'm saying. Opportunities with historical trending. This one actually does, but it's a special feature. Actually, you know what? I guess I probably should say that this one is in the yellow. It's not one I'm worried about, but it is technically in the yellow as well. All right. So when preparing for today, I was rummaging around in setup and in help, and I discovered a document called Standard Report Types Documentation, which is called Standard Report Types in Documentation. So I, sort of big caveat here, this isn't really all that comprehensive. There are no real great examples like, hey, here's this one here, and if you use this, you could use it this way, or you could use it to create this report. Now, it is what it is, but there is still some useful stuff, and the useful stuff is down on the special field level and on the special filter level. And for me, this is one huge reason to start to get to know the standard report types, that there are special fields and you can display those fields as columns. You can use those fields in groupings, and you can also apply filters using those special fields, and you can extend your reach in reporting. So let's go take a look at that in the system. So this is the document standard report types. And if I scroll down a bit, let's say I want to look into campaign reports. And I can really start to learn about specific features and fields with these reports built on these report types, like the campaign ROI analysis report. This is a sample report that's available in Classic. It calculates the return on investment and average cost for your campaigns. And it basically gives you the formula for how that's calculated and so on. Let's go pick another example. So how about on lead reports? So it gives you a couple of tips on how to use the filters. It talks about how the last activity field is used, etc. So I find this valuable, and I'll give you one other example here. So if we go into standard opportunity reports, and these are not, these are sample opportunity reports. So some of the naming in this is sort of like, this is like the old part of the house, the old wing of the house. Some of this stuff these are sample reports that are in Classic, but there's a nice listing of them and what you can do with them. So again, we're rummaging around in help, and there is some interesting stuff in here. Let me just share one more of those interesting items. So if we go on to this document called Tips for Working with Opportunity Reports, we can see how some of these special fields are calculated, like the age field, the stage duration field, and so on. So I'm sharing how to learn about some of these standard report types and some suggestions for how to take advantage of them. Let's actually dig a little bit deeper in here. So I just introduced the topic of documentation. I did mention that there are these things called pre-designed custom report types. So some Salesforce features come with their own custom report types. And there are the call center reports for support. You can create custom approval history reports, and there's a whole bunch of them. And the list is longer than what I can show here. And I'll just open up that document. So under the pre-designed custom report types, there are reports on ideas, Salesforce knowledge articles, chat sessions. And so basically what Salesforce is saying is that pre-designed custom report types are not the same as standard report types. They're kind of somewhere in between. And they're typically enabled when you turn on a feature. So one of them that I'll show you is the account owner report. This is very obscure, ancient feature. If your org-wide defaults are set to private, a feature becomes available. You check a box to turn it on. You have to go to Classic. I'll explain that in just a moment. But there's a whole other category here that I didn't really know. I didn't know a name for it before today, before prepping for today's session. All right, let's spend a few minutes on hidden report types. And this, as you get started, let's say you're taking a brand new job and you show up and you're like, I feel like I should be able to report on this, but I can't figure out how to report on this thing. The reality is that you may have report types that have been hidden. Now, for years, we've been able to do it in Classic. As of last year, we were given the ability to do it in Lightning. You do have to be a system administrator, or you have to have the profile permission, manage custom report types. If one of these two things is true, you will see below the list of report types, and like, how strange is it that they embedded this into the report type selection screen? I feel like all of this should have been moved to setup. This shouldn't be in the report type selection screen, but that's where it is. So if I go to create a new report and I'm on the report type selection screen, I can click on the hidden report types link at the bottom, and I can see that there are some hidden report types in my system, and I can choose to make them unhidden if I need to take advantage of them. So let's actually go take a look at that. So back in here, again, if I go to create a new report, at the bottom left of the screen is the hidden report types. If I click on that, there is a list of hidden report types here. These are ones that somebody in the past has hidden. And this is for everyone. This is not an individual setting. This is one reason why I would rather that this feature be back in setup, not under this, not within the create custom report screen. So what I can do is I can come in here and I can choose show report type to make the solution report type available again. If I come back here, I can now see that that's available. And again, so you can use this two ways, right? If there are categories of functionality that you're just not using, why not hide that? So if you don't use solutions, this is an ancient feature from the days of Classic. So if you don't use it, you could literally go to the right, the action pull down menu to the right of the report type, choose hidden report type. If I click on the report type, I also have access to it right here in this little pull down action menu.
Oh, Lynette. That's
sorry.
Well, Lynette has a question. They're asking if they're in the all category, if they use the search feature, does it show hidden reports as well?
Oh, Lynette, great question. So the answer would be no. So really, really great question. So let's search on the word solutions and let's type it correctly. So I didn't hide these two report types, but I hid some of the others with the word solution in it, and they're just not showing up. So great question, Lynette. All right. All right, let's talk about digging for gold. All right. So this is really the whole point of this Dōjō session, is to say, hey, there are a bunch of these, there are about 75 or so standard report types. Some of them have features that could be really useful to you. So what I suggest, there are a couple ways to explore. Before you create the report, while you're creating the report, Salesforce gave us on the report type selection screen the ability to see the objects included in the report type. So I've got the opportunity object, the opportunity report type here, and it's telling me it's a standard report type, and I can see reports that have been created with it, and I can see a list of objects that are included in the report type. I can see that there are 136 fields available, and if I click on that fields, that's what I see in this screenshot over to the way right, and I can actually look through all the fields that are available. So if you're curious, is this field on this report type, you can find it that way. Or you can hunt around and look for unusual fields. And again, this is really the point of doing this Dōjō session, is that there are some goodies tucked away. So where I used to look for these things before this functionality came out last year was in the report builder itself. And I still encourage you to do this. There is the show fields pane that you can expand from the left-hand side, and you can just scroll through and just look at what's available to you on that report. And you could use those fields as columns, you could use those fields for groups, and you could use those fields for filters. Now, I'm mentioning those three things for a purpose, because some of the really cool things you can do with reporting actually involve these special fields and using them in groups and using them in filters to really get at what you're trying to show on the report. So let's just put a placeholder on that and we'll circle back. Really, again, that just to reiterate, consider innovative combinations of groups, columns, and filters using these special fields. So what special fields am I talking about? Well, here's an example. So, and I want to show the difference between the opportunities standard report type and if you create a custom report type on opportunities. So on the standard report type called opportunities, there's a field called fiscal period. There's a field called fiscal year. There's a field called age, stage duration. These four fields do not exist. They don't exist on a custom report type on the same object. And there are many more fields available just because of the nature of the standard report type, that it's also bringing in account fields and contact fields, et cetera. So these fields, if you have use for them, the age or the stage duration, they're only going to be available in the standard report type. And also what I noticed in prepping for today is that some of these special fields, like has products, it is available in a custom report type, but it has a different name. In that case, it's has line item. And then you get down to the filters, and the filters are different as well. So if for the standard report type on opportunities, you have the show me all opportunities and show me the close date. Oh, okay, right. So, and then this is the custom report type here. It still has the show me, my, and all, and the close date, but it doesn't have the special opportunity status or probability. Now, you could just create manual filters to get at those, but it's just not available, right in front of you. So this is one example of the difference between standard and custom report types. I have one other example to talk about, which is on the case object. So the case standard report type versus a custom case report type and what's available. So on the standard out of the box report type called cases, you get the age field and the open field. Now, both of those fields, you could create a formula and do the calculation if you wanted to on the custom report type. So it's not like it's impossible, but these are just right here for you. Sort of interestingly, Salesforce does provide the closed field and the escalated field. So those are two system generated fields that are available on both the standard report type and a custom report type. But on the standard report type, what you also get when you report on the case object is the case comments information, you get account information, there's just other stuff. So again, when you're exploring and rummaging around in your report types, it's really valuable just to scroll down and look for these things. All right, so let's talk about some specifics. So some specific standard report types that could be useful to you. So one of them is the case lifecycle report. And you can use these case history fields. You can use them as columns, you can use them in groups, you can use them in filters. So on the case lifecycle report, there is a set of fields: the case history owner, the case history status, the case history last modified by, last modified date, and then there's a duration field. And these can be used in interesting ways. So when you first run the case lifecycle report, it groups it by case history owner and case history status. And it will give you, duration and give you counts and some other things. I don't have a ton of useful data here to show in this report example, but it's really more that these fields are available to you. So if we dig into the system, I've got the case lifecycle report right here with a little bit more data visible. And if I come in now, again, when exploring and trying to figure out like what is in this standard report type, what you might do is explore the show fields pane and just scroll through the list of the fields and just look for unusual things. And in this case, I mentioned age and open. And then you also have this case history set of fields, and we're using it within the groupings. So we're grouping rows and owners by case history fields. We can also use them in the filters. So you can always scroll down. In fact, in this case, I don't even have to scroll down. They're right at the top. So if I want to say, for cases that were hit a particular status in the past and filter on those, I can do that using the case history status in a filter. And there is a page in help that lists out a number of fields that are available specifically for case reports. So some of them are on some old self-service usage related reports, but there are some others that are actually interesting. And again, just to point out that, digging around in help. So here's that page in help. And if I scroll down, they're just fields that might be useful to you, like it has an attachment. So this is on for a report type called cases with emails. And this may not be a report type, it may be a sample report. And I want to talk about the old sample reports in Classic in just a moment. How are we doing with questions, Kyle?
One came in around accounts without open tasks, if we don't want to see detail of the tasks.
How about accounts without open tasks? Oh, okay, Marty, you ready for this? So we did a session a while ago on filters. In fact, I think the first ever Dōjō was called Fun with Filters, I think. And we dug into the topic of cross filters. So let's do your example real quick. So what you could do is just create a report on accounts. Just create a report on accounts. You don't even need activities in this case. So if we start the report on accounts, and let's go right to the filters, and I can say, let's open up the standard filters and let's add a cross filter. So this is a very special feature. Salesforce filed a patent for this. I can add a cross filter, and this allows you to show only accounts with or without the presence of records in some child object. So I can say accounts, and I think your question was without, and I can go find activities here. So that's doing it a slightly different way. And you can even go further, and you can add a filter to that, and you can say without ones that are the status is open or not started, whatever it is that you specifically want. All right, so Kathy asked a question: is there a way to report or search for a report type that has a particular field available? So yeah, you're welcome, Marty. So Kathy's question is great. The answer is, which side of the tracks do you live on? because a feature that was introduced as beta last year has only been steered toward unlimited edition, where you could search, you could filter by object and field. So I was able to demo it in the fall when the beta came out, and now in spring 23, it's a UE or unlimited edition only feature. But if I come in and create a new report, so to Kathy's question, she's wondering, is there a way to filter? So let's say I choose all, category all. Well, that feature that's available only on unlimited, there it adds a button to further filter your list here. And I'm sorry, I can't demo it. I don't have a UE org here. But that button allows you to say, hey, I only want report types that have this object and this field. When the beta came out, it was kind of clunky. So I'm actually not that bothered that it's only unlimited anyway. So Kathy, the other way to do what you're trying to do is hunt and peck. So if you go pick one report type, so let's say I pick the leads with converted lead information report type, and I go down to the fields, you could search, like, does this allow me to do anything with converted? Yes, it does. There are two fields. Is it converted, true or false? And does it have a converted date? So you have to hunt and peck though. So it's that filtering, I think, would be useful at the, that's only available for unlimited. All right. So talking about leads with converted lead information, great segue. So this is a standard report type that's kind of cool, and it could be cooler, but I find it useful. So this shows all lead information. And for leads that are converted, it shows a few contact fields, and then it shows some, but not all, opportunity fields available. So you could say, I want to see all the leads that converted last quarter. Where are they now? And you could group them by opportunity status if they have opportunities. So you can display, you can display columns, you can group, and you can filter by these two special fields. So converted is a true false field. There's also converted date. And you can see those two fields here that you can use, and you can use them in interesting ways. So you go create a report on leads with converted lead information. You can see all the different categories of fields available, and you can hunt through there. I mentioned the converted date and the converted fields, and here they are. We can use them in groups, and we can also use them in filters as well. All right, so Steve asked the question, unless I'm misunderstanding Kathy, you can also go to the field within the object and hit the where used button. Oh, that's a great point, Steve. So I haven't really kept up on how useful that is. So I did, and there sometimes with these features, they're available on custom things, but not standard things sometimes. So let's go to the lead object and let's just see if we can hunt the other way around. So if we go to the lead object, this is in setup. This is something a sysadmin could do. Out of the box, non-sysadmins could see this as well. Some companies restrict it. But again, I've come into setup, I've clicked on object manager, I've come to the lead object. And what's unfortunate here is they don't even show the converted field or the converted date field. So some of these system generated formula fields don't appear here, but do appear on some reports, but not all reports. And they might appear on some list views, but not all list views. It's a little maddening. Okay, so Gene says, except for standard fields. Yes. I don't know. Okay, it looks like I have a custom field here. So let's go look at this custom field. And then we've got the where is this used? This probably isn't used on any report, but it would be interesting to see if that gets updated. So let's just take 2 seconds and do that. So I'm just going to create a lead report and throw the SIC code on there, because why not? And then the question is it updated up to the second? Probably not. There's probably some script that runs at night or something. But this is all I'd have to do to test it out. So this is a SIC lead report test, and I'll put it in another folder. Let's put it in the cesspool of public reports. Okay, so that's now saved. And let's see how quickly this works. Does this get updated? So I'm back in setup and the where is this used? And because it's XML, like the system is just stored in XML, like I kind of figured this would probably be updated pretty quickly. And it was. So great point. It looks like with custom fields, another way to determine is the field used is to go into the definition for the list of fields and relationships, go to a particular field, and then to click on the where is this used button. So great tip. Thank you, Steve. All right. So I want to talk about a couple more examples, and then I want to circle back to some other sort of obscure stuff, interesting stuff. So the opportunity history standard report type, it's sort of unfortunately named because if you use field history on any other object, it's the object name and the word history next to it. This opportunity history standard report type, it predates field history tracking. So the field history tracking on just this one object, they put the word field in before. You can see it on the screenshot up here on the right. So the opportunity history one, this is an old report type that's available. It's tied to a feature that Salesforce just gives you out of the box, where it's tracking the changes to a handful of key opportunity fields, such as stage, close date, amount, forecast category. And because Salesforce is tracking changes, just auto logging changes to those handful of fields, they have a report type available where you can take advantage of them. So if you need to report on stage changes, if you need to highlight deals that are going backwards, this is kind of cool. This is very obscure. There's this feature. It's not field history tracking. There's nothing you can do to turn it on. There's nothing you can do to change this. It's just there. But what this opportunity history report type introduces is a from stage field, a to stage field. So you could say on a filter, I want to see all the ops that were in the qualified stage, but now are in the contract stage, just because I want to dig into those. You've got the stage change field, the stage duration field. The stage duration is for this current, in this current stage that it's in now. How long has it been there? You also have the forecast category from and to, and you can report on that. You can filter on it. You can group by it. So you might be curious about ones that were committed but are no longer committed. So if you're in charge of ops at your company and you have a weekly meeting and suddenly like $1 million disappeared from the committed pipeline, or the committed forecast, like what happened? You could dig in and use these things to your advantage. So within the filters, we can certainly take advantage of these same fields. We can take advantage of them in groups. We can take advantage of them in filters. And then there's this one other standard filter here, which is the include filter on this opportunity history report type. There is a downgraded option. So you can include just downgraded opportunities. In the nonprofit world, that might be, somebody has, somebody pledged something, but then suddenly they call and said, what, I made a mistake. I can't pledge that. And now it's back to the drawing board. So we might want to filter on those while that's downgraded because it was pledged and now it's no longer pledged.
David Carroll had a question on, can public reports, aka unfiled public reports in Classic, be hidden?
I would probably either move them into a hidden folder, or essentially like archive them into a hidden folder. So last spring we did probably one of the most popular dojos we've done on decluttering the report and dashboard tabs, and we talk about some of those techniques to move things out of the public folder. But no, things that are in the public folder, it's a cesspool of just junk. Every now and then you kind of have to flush it, flush the cesspool of stuff. All right, it looks like Sayana, and I'm probably not saying your name correctly, asked the question, is there any way to have a color-coded status such as new as green, not started as gray? Okay, so this is a different kind of question. We did do a dashboard dojo on conditional formatting last fall, and we talked about all the ways to do conditional formatting in both reports and dashboards. So I'd suggest, Sayana, you dig into that. So there is on reports conditional formatting, and then on dashboards, we have a couple of ways within metrics and within lightning tables to do color specific things based on values. So hopefully that's helpful to you. Thank you, Kyle, for putting those links in the chat.
Of course.
All right, so let's talk about another one that's unique and powerful. This is the opportunity trend standard report type. Once again, this is a feature that's built on something that Salesforce set up. It's been running for years. You joined your company, you left that company, you joined another company, you left that company, you're now in your third Salesforce instance. And this stuff's just been running the whole time. This opportunity trends on the first day of every month. Salesforce wakes up and it copies a bunch of fields about all your opportunities and it sticks it somewhere. And it basically enables us to use the opportunity trends report type and create reports on this information. And once again, you can display these fields, you can group by these fields, and you can filter by these fields. And this is the example where it gets really, really interesting to either do groupings or do filterings on these fields, because you can get at some really cool information. So for this particular report type, there is the historical amount, the historical stage, the historical close date, the historical probability, and all of that is tied to an as of date. And all of the as of dates are the first day of each month. So if this opportunity has existed now for 6 months, and those 6 months have crossed through 5 first days of the month, we have 5 prior months of trend information on this particular opportunity. If the opportunity happens to be deleted, all of that trend information gets wiped out. And that might be one reason to consider using a reporting snapshot instead of relying on this. But there's no setup and it's been running forever. You can immediately take advantage of this. So here's a very simple example over here on the left where I'm showing the historical stage, and like for the prospecting stage, how much did we have in prospecting in October? How much did we have in November? It looks like it didn't change anything between those 2 months. And then we got to December and there's a massive change, dropping by about $100,000. But you can basically look at the history. Now, I like to see this in a chart, and you can literally just show the trends. So you could have striations, colors by prospecting stages, your sales stages, with the dollar amount per stage being the thickness of the bar. It's really kind of cool. Now, you could also use this as of date. You can use the historical stage. So you might do something like, for all the deals that were open as of last October, where are they now? So instead of grouping on the historical stage, I'd group on the current stage, and I'd set the filter for the as of date of October 1st. And for the historical date stage of anything that's open, where are they now? And you could just report on that. So there's so many interesting combinations to use with this opportunity trends. We do have a number of trending sessions that we've done. One of the earliest OpFocus ones, not OpFocus, sorry, Dōjō sessions were on It's Time for Trending. There's a link here. There's a few other trending sessions we've done in the Dōjō as well. But let me show you in the system. If we come back to the report builder, create a new report, come to opportunities. So this opportunity trends, this is the one that's available all the time out of the box. There's another feature that we've talked about called historical trendings, and historical trending, and we have done a Dōjō on that before as well. Very interesting, old, powerful. That's a separate thing that you need to turn on, and it's only tracks for up the current month plus the prior 3 months, whereas this will go back to the beginning of time probably. And if you choose this opportunity trends, you can come in here and you can do interesting things. So I mentioned, so instead of grouping by historical stage, maybe I group this by the current stage. And of course, the browser's going really slowly. Sorry about that. And I might come in here and say for all the deals. So for all the deals that were open, we'll make it all time. And I'll customize and I'll say for last October. And I'll probably get the greater than or less than wrong here, but let's see. No, looks like we have some data. So this is that as of trending information from last October. Where are all those deals now? And maybe I only want to show the ones that were open or that sort of thing. So I could go run this and dig into that. Okay. So the last standard report type I want to talk about is on reports. We did a Dōjō last spring cleaning, decluttering your reports, and we've got the QR code here. You might use might create a report on reports to start your report tab cleanup effort. You would probably zero in on the dates, such as the last modified or the created date, the created by, last modified by. Probably the most valuable field is a special field called last run, like literally what was the last time this was run. My strong suggestion before a cleanup effort, and we talk about this in that Dōjō session, Kyle just threw the link into the chat. Thank you, Kyle. My strong suggestion is to create this report first, and export the results to Excel so that you have all of the original last run dates like in there. Like in the OpFocus system. So basically in that Dōjō session, I documented OpFocus is cleaning up our cleanup of our reports tab. And we had reports that weren't run in 14 years. And it was just so funny, and somebody created or it came from an App Exchange app way back when, and nobody ran the report. There's probably no reason to. And that stuff was just sitting in our system. But because we had created a report, exported it to Excel, and included that last run information, we had it preserved. Now, if you go looking at reports, you're going to basically blow away the last run and replace it with today. So you lose that information. That's why you want to export it to Excel. All right, let's talk about some obscure stuff that may only interest me. There is an ancient feature called the account owner report. It's so ancient that you can't see it directly in Lightning. It took me a while to figure out why I couldn't see it in Lightning. I thought it was a caching issue, but it wasn't. So this feature becomes available if your sharing settings are set to private. So if this was a public system, public read write for accounts, and I moved it to private, and then that exposed a feature called the account owner report. And if that box is checked and you click save, then the feature is available. I couldn't find it because it's still only available in Classic. And it took me a while. I'm like, oh, this should expose a report type, but it's not a report type. It's one of these darn Classic sample reports. So I switched to Classic. There is this report that's suddenly available called the account owner report, and it works unlike any other report that you have. So this in an account private sharing org, this allows anybody to see, basically look up who's the owner of an account that I can't see. So let's say that I'm a new sales analyst and Tina owns the Goldman Sachs relationship. I could, in my org-wide private system, I could run this report and see that Tina owns the account that I'm interested in. It also has a filter called created since. What I did is I created this report, I saved it in Classic. So basically I ran the sample report in Classic and I saved it, and then I could see the report in Lightning. And so what I did is I just then ran it in Lightning. And it's interesting that sometimes these old features don't all come over. So it lets you filter on the person's name, but that created since date is gone. It's not available in Lightning for some reason. It didn't get pulled over. So there's some obscure stuff within these. And interestingly, some of the sample reports in Classic have standard report types that are not visible unless you unless you go back to Classic, run the report, save the report, open it in Lightning, and you can see what the standard report type is. It's called account owners. It doesn't exist anywhere else. And just to show you one other example of that, so there are still a ton of reports available to you in Classic. There are 70 or so reports available in Classic. If you switch back to Classic and you go look in some of these system generated folders, there are these reports available. And some of them have unique report types. And the only way you can use the report type is to start with these some of these reports. So I mentioned this for two reasons. One, some of these sample reports are kind of interesting and useful. And then number two, depending on what you're trying to do, the only way you'd see a report type might be if you essentially clone one of these and then repurpose it for your own needs. So this is really getting obscure, but I found a few examples where the report type, the only way I could use it is to clone the Classic sample report and bring it over to Lightning and then do something with it. So this is getting very obscure, but there's just stuff that's hidden in here. So what does that mean to go to Classic? Some of you, I hope there are some of you on the call that have never seen Classic before. Excuse me while I throw up and while I'm looking at this, but if I scroll down, there are these old folders like opportunity reports. There's a bunch of sample reports here. Some of these could be useful to you. And some of these have report types that there's no other way to use them. One example of this is campaign reports. There's a report called campaign call down. And if I specify a particular campaign and run it, now in Classic, there was no way that I know of to see what the report type was. Maybe it was under report properties. Let me actually just, I can't think of a campaign. I just throw something in there. Of course, I don't know any campaigns. Maybe it's under the report properties. So let's go look here. Customize. Gosh, I used this for 10 years and I forget how to use it. Okay, so we can see it in Classic under the report properties. I forgot that, that is there. But again, some of these sample reports have report types that you can't use any other way. And there's another example here. The all pending approval requests is a report that's a sample report type, sample report in Classic. I basically cloned it. I opened it in Lightning, and I can see the unique report type and essentially use it by just modifying the report. Okay, we talked about a whole bunch of stuff. I imagine there are questions. What I'd love to have any of you share is, are there report types that you find really useful that are the standard report types? That would be really interesting to me. We can see if there are any more questions. If anybody wants to come off mute, you could use the raise your hand feature and just we could let you come off mute if you want to share any of the standard report types that are useful to you. I'm going to jump back over to Classic while I wait for that. I'm going to jump back over to Lightning and just see if any others jump out. So if I go to the reports tab, click on new report. Go ahead, Kyle.
Oh, sorry. Cindy said, I've noticed the summary info on the dashboard doesn't match with the detail info on the report. Suggestions to debug.
Oh, one question would be, is there a dashboard filter applied? Another would be, is it a dynamic dashboard? That could be two reasons why it's different. Cindy, depending on your personal permissions. So when you run a report, you might have different visibility than the running user on the dashboard. So when you run a dashboard, it's not necessarily running as you. Typically, you'd make it a VP of a department or somebody who may have different visibility than you do. The other thing to just double check is that the plumbing is connected correctly. So you're assuming that this report called Open Pipeline is feeding this dashboard with a component called Open Pipeline. And a lot of times the plumbing isn't connected. So if you go to that dashboard and click on that component and essentially open the report just to make sure it is indeed the same report, that's another thing I could think of for you. So hopefully that's helpful for you. So the other thing with the standard report types, again, dig into them under administrative reports. There are some useful ones here. Under other reports, you have your custom objects, stuff gets listed under there. I kind of thought for today I would go through a compendium of like my favorite ones. And I guess I did go through a subset of my favorite ones. Um, Again, all of these things with the word with, I would be, questioning whether the with ones are useful because of the equijoin, or just tread carefully with them, with the with ones. All right, so last couple of topics. Next week, we're in class again. I'll be teaching our 2-day hands-on report and dashboard workshop. You're, love to have you join us. This is a class that's put on by OpFocus. It's 2 days running from 10 to 4:30 each day, Eastern time. We do have upcoming Dōjō sessions on the 22nd, a getting started with Salesforce reports. If you have a colleague who's brand new, or if you just want to revisit the basics on Salesforce reports, I thought to copy from our friends over at Automation Hour, who are doing a series on the basics of flow and automation. I thought, maybe we should do that. Just get the basics recorded for people. So we're going to do 2 sessions, February 22nd and March 15th, on getting started with Salesforce reports, and then we'll sort of swerve back to all these interesting topics. But keep in mind that on dashboarddojo.com, we have almost 40 hours of recordings on all different report and dashboard topics. So hopefully that's useful to you. And Kyle, thank you for putting those links in the chat. I think we're going to wrap up for today. I don't see any questions. So guys, I hope things are going great for you and that you're busy and excited about 2023. Please share any topics that you'd like to see for the dojo. I'm so glad that you joined us today and been part of it. Thank you again, Kyle, for hosting us.
Of course. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and hope to see you at future sessions.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Take care.